An ambush. Brigands descend upon the company and butcher most of the men. You are left in command now, and you order a hasty retreat to save what few men remain. Your employer promised riches to slay the brigand leader, so you hire a few farmers reeking of dung and urine and thrust spear and shield into their calloused hands. The brigands have archers, so you order your men to stand fast, raise their shields and advance slowly. You lose a good man, but this wins you the battle. Victorious, you take your pay to a larger city, expand your ranks, and acquire new steel and armor. You'll make this company known throughout the land. As you battle from the snowy north to the deserts in the south, your men gain experience, and you mold them into hardened mercenaries, each an expert for a different weapon. But as your ranks grow, so do your problems. One of your men, a drunkard, just lost his weapon. You have him flogged, so he never drinks again. But this leaves him bitter and frustrated. And then, a green-skin horde invades. As a tide of destruction sweeps over the land, there's good coin to be made for a mercenary company such as yours. Fame and fortune await.
Thank you everyone for joining us on the Obsolete Gamer Show. I am J.A. LaRock, and I love RPGs. I've been playing them for a long time, from MMOs to turn-based to Japanese RPGs. And I'm always looking for something that's new, something that's different, something that's innovative. So I'm really happy today to be joined by Jan Taaks from Overhyped Studios, and we're going to be talking about their upcoming game that's been in early access on Steam for quite a while, but the release date's going to be coming up on March 24th. Their game Battle Brothers is a turn-based strategy RPG, and it's a really interesting game that we're going to be talking to him today about. Thanks for coming on. Now, I just want to make sure, did I butcher your last name? Because I actually put your last name in one of those pronunciation things, and it broke the website.
Right. No, it's Jan Taaks. Yeah, it's a very German name. So first of all, thanks for having me on the show.
Ah, okay, Jan Taaks. Okay, got it.
Yeah, Taaks. It's a really tricky one.
So you guys are out of Hamburg, Germany, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all three of us. It's like three guys. It's the basic team, and we're all in Hamburg.
Ah, very cool. So how did the studio get started?
Well, it started out with me and my twin brother, Paul. And we've been wanting for making games for like a long time. But, he's a geologist and I'm a economist. So we didn't have like a gaming background. And then we started out as a hobby project, and we really wanted to have like a fantasy XCOM, and nobody was making that. So we thought, okay, let's try doing that. And at some point, Christoph, who's a programmer, he joined the team. And it was basically just one step after the other, and after like 5 years now, we are here out of early access almost. So that's the short version.
That's cool. I mean, one of the great things about talking to different people, especially around the world, is you find out about different games, what gamers like. You hear in Europe they like, different types of games. I mean, obviously there can be people that like all types of games all over, but would you say, just being in the gaming field in Germany, is there like a particular style of games that you say that is like bigger out there?
Yeah, there's like two things. Like Germany is like one of the biggest consumer markets for video games, but very small in production, which is a shame, I think. And for consuming, they really like the strategy games, simulations. They like like a game where you're riding a train on a railroad for like 3 hours. They really love that stuff here. And on the production side, they do mainly mobile and browser-based games. So that's like the breakdown of the scene in Germany, and small indie scene as well.
So as far as Battle Brothers, people were calling it like a mixture of a turn-based style RPG and then mixing it in with like tactical. what is your like description of the game?
I think the best descriptions, like you could say a turn-based Mountain Blade or a fantasy XCOM. I think those are like the two easiest comparisons that you can make, because it's very, very difficult to pinpoint it, because it has grown to something completely unique. That it's the combination. It's really very rare. So you basically have like a world map with a management aspect, and then you have a second layer that is the tactical combat. And the world map is in real time, and the tactical combat is turn-based. So that's a bit unique for us.
What was really interesting looking at the reviews on Steam, which is like 99% positive, which you don't see anywhere, is people talked about how you don't just get rewarded for just playing. You know, there's some RPGs out there, especially turn-based, where you can just click just a bunch of buttons and you're going to win 99% of your fights. Now, this is in the medieval times, so it's supposed to be brutal, and in the gameplay you see that that's the case. But here, strategy actually matters, picking your weapons, deciding how you set up your troops. Can you walk us a little bit how the actual tactical of fighting, the actual battle mechanics work, so that you don't get slaughtered when you're fighting like goblins, undead, different types of enemies?
Yeah, sure. When we started out, we want to have a system that is very deep and complex, but it should be easy to understand. And you can only achieve that if you have intuitive game design. So, just imagine you are like a fighter in a medieval fight. What would you do? I mean, you would get a shield and hold it up. You would want to be on the high ground. And all these things that you will do, they will make sense within the game. And that those are all rules that we do not really have to explain. And in the game, we started out basically you fighting against those small-time bandits, and they are pretty easy to take down. And then you will develop a tactic. You have use a lot of shields, use some ranged guys for your advantage, and make use of the defensive abilities. Many people really don't like using defensive abilities, but it's pretty key in the game. And once you got your tactics down for these first easy enemies, we wanted the player to think new when he meets new enemies. It's so when he fights orcs, for example, he has to change his tactics. He will get challenged on a regular basis, and I think that is something that many games don't do. So you have like a one-size-fits-all tactic, and you can use it against all enemies, and that's definitely not the case with our game. And it's a bit part of the difficulty, but I think you have to put a challenge to your players to not bore them. So within the game, you have to always maintain quite a large group of people, and you have to be willing to take casualties. So people who really don't like to lose men will have a very hard time in Battle Brothers, but it's part of the game. It sounds very brutal, like calculating some losses, but if you're not willing to do that, I think your chances are pretty slim of making it very far in the game.
Right, and that's an interesting aspect, because you're hiring people and you have to switch people out, because not only are there injuries in the game, but there's actual permadeath. And the only way somebody can come back from your team is like as an undead, which is really interesting. And even though there's not like a class restriction, anyone can learn any of the weapons. You may not necessarily want to give everyone a certain weapon, because people will have maybe like an ability that they're better at.
Yeah, exactly. That thing that the people will die with permadeath, that comes from the original XCOM. And in that game, you hired like a really big bunch of faceless soldiers, and in the combat, a lot of them would die, and the ones who survived, you had like this emergent stories from the gameplay, and you would name them and say, this guy survived like 3 missions, he's a really veteran now, and we wanted to capture that feeling, and I think that's one of the main inspirations and reasons behind the permadeath thing for us. And the other point you mentioned with the regarding the skills and the what weapons you should give to your guys, we wanted to have like a classless system, which is pretty tricky to pull off. To be honest, we had to rework the system a couple of times to work. But we wanted to give as much freedom to the player as possible. So if you wanted to do an all-ranged squad, you can do that, or use a lot of throwing weapons or whatever. We wanted to give as much agency to the player as possible and try crazy things as well.
So the world itself is procedurally generated. So it's an open world campaign. So you can go around and you can interact with the people, and you're able to actually make different choices as well. It's not like when you're walking around, you're stuck in a certain storyline. You can decide to start attacking like a noble or even like the peasants, right?
Yeah, that's true. We wanted to keep the replayability as high as possible, as you mentioned, like the procedural generation. That's a really tricky word for us Germans, procedural, but um, yeah, and because we wanted to, the main aspect was we want two people who are playing the game to meet and they have completely different stories. And you can only achieve that when you have like a different world, different characters and everything for each playthrough. And the second thing you mentioned about you are able to attack caravans, you can be a bandit. I mean, it's you have to be aware that people will hire mercenaries that hunt you down and so on. But I mean, you can do that if you want to give like the freedom to the player, but it's also the freedom to fail. You know, it's many people are not used to freedom to fail anymore with all the new games doing a lot of hand holding and basically telling the player at every step what to do. But of course, you reduce frustrations as well because you cannot really do anything wrong. But with the freedom that the player can have, we think we get a lot of different stories out of the game, and that works very well with the procedural generation for all the parts of the world.
And it was really interesting that you were able to put so much into the characters, not only having so many, your diverse enemy roster, like so many different skills and AI behavior, but also the backstories and the traits for each of the hero characters that you have on your team.
Yeah, it's all the backstories are also procedurally generated from different text modules. So if you have two like fishers or two militia guys, they will have different backstories and random names and traits and all that. It's a thing. It's a thing that you have guys you can hire that are not good. So if when you hire two guys with the same background or similar background, one will maybe good and one may be bad, but for the game, it's very important that people accept. It's a bit of this, play the hand that you get dealt, and you will have some negative things, but it's all about the story. So I think even if you have like unlikely heroes, that's even more interesting than having like a guy which is obviously better than everybody else and he keeps smashing all the enemies.
Right.
If you have like a fisherman who didn't learn how to fight and you put a spear in his hand and for some crazy reason he ends up killing the orc war leader or something, I mean that's a good story that you have from the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I thought was really awesome too, is that you have like late game crisis where you'll have like different big events that will come up, like fighting against the noble houses, greenskin invasions, undead scourge, and things like that.
Yeah, the late game crisis is something that we put in just with the latest patch, and it's pretty much the last thing we put in because we wanted to make sure that all the sandbox game is working and entertaining enough, so you don't really need it. And it's our type of a basic storyline, so that the game has a distinct goal or an ending, if you will. Of course, players can keep playing after they defeated the crisis, but it's a bit of a climax that we wanted to have in the game. So, and to give the player a purpose, and for the early and mid games, and he knows what his destiny is in the world. I mean, many players don't really care for the late game crisis, funnily enough, and they just want to play the sandbox experience. But you can do that in the game as well. So it's about freedom again.
Yeah, and finally, people have been, raving about not only the artwork, the battle animations, just overall how it looks. They said that, it's like drawn like a painting. And also the soundtracks, like I was reading here on a press release that, over 2 full hours of orchestra soundtrack. So, it's from top to bottom, it's put together very, very well.
We had a lot of luck. I mean, my twin brother, he has has been working for a Hamburg-based gaming company for 5 years as a concept artist, and he's been doing all the art in the whole game, like from every screen to every asset. and he defined the visual style. And we didn't want to any 3D is a lot of work, and we're just three guys. That was not an option. And this pixel 2D thing, to my mind, it's a bit, it can go out of fashion, and I think it will pretty soon. And so we decided to go for this style where you have a lot of details. You can show like a lot of small things, like people getting wounded or the armor getting destroyed in combat and so on. And it really sparks the imagination. And for the music, we were very lucky to find two guys, Dennis and Patrick, and who are also Hamburg based, and they've been doing our whole soundtrack. And they did an amazing job. Like even the music for the trailer is from them, and they are really cool guys.
So the game is Battle Brothers from Overhyped Studios, based out of Hamburg, Germany. It'll be released on March 24th. I hope you guys will go check it out on Steam. Thanks, Jan, for coming on and talking with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.